The dust had not yet settled, but a chill had. It was a coldness that had nothing to do with the air and everything to do with the silence. King David, a man whose heart usually danced to the rhythm of God's promises, felt a stone of fear settle in his chest. He had seen God's power. He had faced a giant with nothing but a sling and a prayer. But this was different. This was a holy fire he did not understand. The Ark of the Covenant, God's very footstool on earth, was meant to be a symbol of his presence, a source of Israel's strength. Today, it had become a source of death. Uzzah was gone. A good man, a strong man, who had only reached out his hand to steady the sacred chest. A simple, human reflex, a fatal mistake. David's grand procession, once alive with songs and celebration, was now a funeral march. The music had died on the lips of the singers. The dancing feet of the maidens had frozen in the dirt. David looked at the ark, gleaming under the Judean sun, and for the first time, he was afraid of it. He was the king. He was responsible. How could he bring this terrifying holiness into his city, into the heart of his kingdom? He could not. The risk felt too great, the chasm between his own imperfection and God's perfect holiness too wide. David's spirit, usually so bold, recoiled. "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" he whispered, the words catching in his throat. It was not a question of logistics, but of worthiness. It was the cry of a man who suddenly felt very small before a very big God. The joy of the day had been shattered, replaced by a profound and sobering awe. He needed time. He needed distance. He needed to understand the God he thought he knew so well. So the king made a decision. The journey to Jerusalem would stop here. The ark would not enter the city gates, not today. He scanned the faces of his men, their expressions mirroring his own confusion and sorrow. A new plan formed, born of caution and reverence. The ark needed a temporary home, a place where it could rest until David could quiet the trembling in his soul. He could not, in good conscience, bring what he now feared into the midst of his people. The sacred chest, God's promise in a box, would have to wait. And so, a new unplanned destination was chosen. The procession turned. It moved away from the proud path to Jerusalem and took a humbler road. It wound its way toward the gentle hills near the border of Judah. The destination was not a palace. It was not a fortress. It was the simple, unassuming home of a man named Obed-Edom. He was a Gittite, a foreigner from Gath, a man who lived a quiet life far from the king's court. He was likely a farmer, a husband, a father. His hands were calloused from work, not from holding a scepter. His name was not known in the halls of power. But God knew his name. Imagine the surprise. Imagine standing in your doorway, wiping sweat from your brow, and seeing the king's procession approaching your small plot of land, not with fanfare, but with a heavy, solemn spirit. And at its center, carried on the shoulders of sober-faced Levites, was the ark. The very presence of God, a treasure so holy it struck a man dead for touching it, was now being brought to your doorstep. What would you do? Would you run? Would you protest? Would you be filled with the same fear that had gripped the heart of the king? This was not a gift you asked for. It was a burden from the Almighty. Obed-Edom did not run. He did not protest. We are not told of his fear, only of his acceptance. Perhaps he saw the king's distress. Perhaps he understood the sacredness of the moment. Or perhaps his heart was simply open. He was a man who knew his place before God. He was not a king. He was not a priest. He was just a man, invited to do an extraordinary thing, to house the God of Israel, to care for the Creator's throne. His home was not a temple, just a collection of stone walls and a well-worn floor. But it would have to do. So the Ark of the Covenant, the object of a king's terror, was carefully carried across the threshold of Obed-Edom's house. The soldiers and priests departed, leaving the sacred chest in the quiet custody of this humble family. The silence that followed must have been profound. The air itself probably felt different, heavier, charged with an unseen power. The family, Obed-Edom, his wife, his sons, were now the guardians of Israel's most holy relic. They were living with the physical manifestation of God's covenant. Their simple life was about to become anything but. There was no grand ceremony. No golden lampstands were brought in. No fine linen was draped over the furniture. The welcome Obed-Edom and his family gave the ark was one of the heart. It was a welcome of reverence. They did not treat the sacred chest as a piece of furniture or a trophy. They understood what it was. It was holy. They walked softly around it. They spoke in hushed tones in its presence. Their home became a sanctuary, not by decoration, but by devotion. They moved with a new sense of purpose, a quiet respect that permeated every corner of their dwelling. Each morning, the family would rise, and their first thoughts would be of the honored guest in their midst. They would gather, not out of duty, but out of awe. Their prayers were likely simple, whispered words of praise and petition. They asked for nothing. They simply offered their respect. They taught their children not to touch the ark, not out of fear of punishment, but out of love for the one it represented. The ark was a constant, silent reminder that God was with them. It was not an idol to be worshipped, but a throne for an invisible king they sought to honor with their lives. The family's routine changed. A new rhythm settled over the household, a rhythm of peace. Arguments between brothers softened into understanding. The mother's daily tasks felt less like chores and more like acts of service. Obed-Edom himself, as he went out to his fields, carried with him a sense of calm. The presence of the ark did not make them perfect people overnight, but it made them mindful. It made them gentle. It was as if they were constantly on their best behavior, not for fear of being caught, but because they were in the company of someone they loved and deeply respected. Their home, once just a place to eat and sleep, became a house of worship. Every meal was an offering of thanks. Every interaction was an opportunity to show kindness. They did not need a priest to tell them how to behave. Their hearts, open and humble, were their guide. They simply did what felt right. They honored the presence of God by honoring one another. They created a space not just for the wooden chest, but for the very spirit of holiness it carried. And in doing so, they prepared the soil of their lives for an unimaginable harvest of blessings. For 3 months, the Ark of God remained with the house of Obed-Edom, and for 3 months, heaven smiled upon them. The blessings were not loud or dramatic, like lightning from the sky. They were quiet and deep, like a gentle soaking rain after a long drought. The first and most noticeable change was in the family itself. Laughter came more easily. The children played with a lighter spirit. The bond between husband and wife deepened, their conversations filled with a quiet joy and mutual respect. A profound peace, a shalom that passes all understanding, settled over their home. It was a harmony that could not be bought or built. It could only be received. Outside, the land itself seemed to rejoice. Obed-Edom's crops grew with a strange and wonderful vitality. The stalks of wheat stood taller, the heads of grain fuller than any of his neighbors. His olive trees, which had been merely surviving, now seemed to flourish, their leaves a richer green. The vines in his small vineyard produced grapes that were sweeter and more plentiful than he had ever known. It was as if the very soil under his feet was responding to the holy presence in his home. His work was yielding fruit beyond his effort, a clear and tangible sign that God's favor was upon him. A warmth, a gentle glow, seemed to emanate from their dwelling. Neighbors would pass by and feel it. It was not a physical light, but a spiritual one. It was the palpable presence of God's goodness. Travelers who stopped for a drink of water left feeling refreshed in spirit as well as in body. There was no sickness in the house of Obed-Edom. There were no bitter quarrels. There was only health, abundance, and a deep, abiding contentment. God was not just residing in their home. He was blessing every part of their lives, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. These were not blessings of chance. They were the direct result of a holy presence being honored by a humble heart. Obed-Edom had not asked for riches or fame. He had simply opened his door to God. In return, God had opened the windows of heaven. For 90 days, this simple family lived in a bubble of divine grace. Every sunrise brought new mercies. Every sunset was a testament to God's faithfulness. Their small house on the side of a hill had become the most blessed place in all of Israel. It was a living testimony to a simple truth. Where the presence of the Lord is honored, blessing will surely follow. News travels fast in a small kingdom, especially good news. It started as a murmur among neighbors, a conversation at the village well, a comment from a merchant passing through. Did you hear about Obed-Edom, the Gittite, the man who took in the ark? His fields are overflowing. His family is thriving. There is a peace about his home that is different. The whispers grew into a steady report, a story too consistent and too wonderful to be mere gossip. It was a story of inexplicable blessing, a tale of divine favor resting on a humble household. Eventually, the news reached the ears of the king's officials. A messenger, perhaps a soldier who had been part of the somber procession 3 months prior, was dispatched to see for himself. He traveled the road to Obed-Edom's house, expecting to find a family living in quiet fear. Instead, he found a home radiating with life and joy. He saw the healthy children, the abundant crops, the serene look on Obed-Edom's face. He felt the unmistakable atmosphere of peace. He did not need to ask many questions. The evidence was everywhere. The blessing was real. The messenger returned to Jerusalem with haste, his heart light with what he had witnessed. He was brought before King David, who was still wrestling with his fear and uncertainty. The king listened intently as the man spoke. "My lord," the messenger began, "the ark of the Lord has not brought a curse upon the house of Obed-Edom. It has brought a blessing. The Lord has blessed his entire household and everything he owns because of the ark of God." The words fell into the quiet of the throne room like seeds of hope. A blessing, not a curse. David's mind reeled. The same presence that had brought death to Uzzah had brought life to Obed-Edom. What was the difference? It was not the ark itself, for it was unchanging. The difference was in the heart of the man. Uzzah had acted with familiar presumption. Obed-Edom had responded with humble reverence. The lesson was clear, like a sunrise after a long night. God's holiness was not something to be feared and avoided, but something to be honored and respected. The fire that consumed could also be the fire that warmed. The power that judged could also be the power that blessed. A shift occurred in David's soul. The stone of fear began to dissolve, replaced by a burgeoning hope. The report from Obed-Edom's house was a message from God himself. It was a gentle correction, a loving invitation. God did not want his presence to remain on the outskirts, hidden away in a farmhouse. He wanted to dwell among his people. He wanted to be in the center of their lives, in the heart of their capital city. The problem had not been with God's holiness, but with David's approach. Now, he understood. Now, he was ready. With his fear transformed into reverent awe, the king's desire was rekindled. He would bring the ark to Jerusalem. He would finish the journey he had started. But this time, it would be different. There would be no carelessness. There would be careful planning, guided by the laws God himself had given. The Levites would carry the ark properly on their shoulders. Sacrifices would be made. Every step would be taken with humility and profound respect. The celebration would not just be loud, it would be holy. It would be an expression of joy rooted in deep reverence. David's heart, the heart of a poet and a worshipper, soared once more. The God he loved was not a distant, angry deity. He was a holy father who desired to be near his children and who poured out blessings on those who made a place for him. The story of Obed-Edom was a demonstration of God's grace. It was a preview of the blessing that awaited all of Israel if they would welcome their king with the right heart. Hope filled the palace. A new energy pulsed through the city as preparations began again, this time with wisdom and understanding. The king would go himself to the house of Obed-Edom. He would see the blessings with his own eyes and thank the humble man who had been a better steward of God's presence than he, the king, had been. And then, with great joy and holy fear, he would lead the procession. The ark of God was coming home to the city David had prepared for it. It was a journey of faith reborn. A king's heart turned from fear to worship. God was coming to his city, and this time, David would dance before him all the way.